I feel like this thing is going to murder me in my sleep if I buy it. Okay, so when you think of the 2024 election, what issues are most important to you?
So for mine, I coach girls sports, and to see that girls are losing, and what I mean by losing is girls are working out just as hard as men. And when they sit there and they work 4 in the morning, 12, 3, 4, they have all these practices, and then they're cut because somebody comes up who was not born a woman, who has different body type like a woman, and comes in and beats them. That's not fair.
Do you work for a high school?
I do. I work for high school.
Is this a common thing that happens?
Right now, no. And honestly, if you ask any of the girls, I'm very okay with anyone. If they come up, I will never judge you.
Yeah.
But I do have to look at the protection for the girls. I mean, I tore my ACL playing against a boy, and I played my whole life. At 30 years old, I finally tore my ACL because somebody was just a little too rough for me, and I'm a bigger person.
Yeah.
If I can't do it, what about the weaker?
Can I ask you some questions to get to the root of your... So, okay, if there's an 18-year-old who goes to the doctor and they want to get gender-affirming care, do you think that should be okay? That should be okay for them? At
18, you are an adult. You make your own choices. Should I be paying for it? I don't believe so, because even as a woman, if I wanted to get something, for example, a breast reduction, they don't cover it. Braces for my son aren't even covered. I have to fight for braces. So if I have to fight for that, I don't think it should just be, anything else should be given.
That's fair. Because I think conservatives should be for limited government, and sometimes it scares me when I hear people say that the government should be able to step in and stop people from getting some sort of treatment. So let me frame it differently. What if you have a 16-year-old kid who's been through therapy for 4 years, since the age 12, and there's a board of doctors, psychiatrists, people like that saying, hey, we think the next step is gender-affirming care in the form of dressing differently or taking some sort of... Do you think the government should be able to step in and stop that? Or is that also... If there's a consensus from doctors?
So if there's a doctor, I think it's also the parenting. I think that's the problem.
Between the parent, doctor, and kid.
So I'm a single mom of 3, and even with my son right now, I just took him out of public school because of things that are said to him. And my biggest thing right now is, where are the parents? My son was given a book that I didn't know about. He told me about it, and I said, well, that's a little not, you're in 8th grade. I don't understand. 9th, 10th, okay.
Like a sex ed type book?
Oh, he learned about a lot about women and men, and I questioned it, and the teacher kind of was offended, saw that my son's grade went down a little, questioned it. She did call me on the next book, but lied to me about it. So I think parents have to step in. Parents should still be allowed to parent. Also, I don't like schools not telling them. They're not taking the consequence.
That's fair. So you agree with the idea that a decision should be in between the doctor, the parents, and the kid. Like, the government should be able to step in, because, like, then what can you do next? What if some kid goes to the doctor and they want ADHD medication, like Adderall or Vyvanse, and somebody's like, hey, I don't agree with that. Then the government starts to take that away. It's a slippery slope, in my opinion. So, okay, so you're okay with, like, that 16-year-old after therapy. Interesting. So then when it comes to trans sports, I think this is an issue that sometimes liberals sort of get lost on. So what is your overall view, if you had to...
Sure. So this is funny. I'm actually one of the only Republicans in my family, and we all agree that this is not okay. So I think that's also what's being mistook. Not all Democrats agree with it. Why? They have daughters. They have nieces. They understand the difference of it. Again, somebody like me, I'm taller, I'm bigger, I can do it. But what about the ones, they say mediocre boys can play down to women. Well, what happens with the mediocre girls? They have nowhere to go. So you're just pushing them and pushing them. We can choose if we want to play. I had to choose if I wanted to play with the boys team, and I said no because I knew I was going to get my butt kicked.
You think there's a difference between somebody who transitioned after puberty playing a professional sport, and therefore they have more lung capacity, they have thicker bones, they'll most of the time have a larger wingspan? Do you think there's a difference between that and somebody who transitioned before puberty who lacks those things playing in sports? Could you differentiate those two? Like, the former shouldn't be able to, but the latter, since you did it before puberty.
So here's my thing. Even if you're younger, you're training. My son's right now, my middle is 10, but he's still training. So even if he was a girl transitioning, a boy transitioning, they're going to learn the difference of their body. You're getting stronger. So they're going to learn. Here's the thing. When you're younger, you already know how to dribble a ball. Well, now you're going to dribble the ball and you're going to have it stronger. You're going to be better. It doesn't matter when it happens. I would march for this. I have a shirt right now that says I protect kids. People ask me about it all the time, and I said, I work for a school district. Any person who comes up to me, any child, any teen who comes up to me, I will sit there and say, do you want my honest answer? And guess what? I've seen more results when you sit there and have a nice conversation than say, you should just do it, just do it.
But do you really think kids are transitioning en masse, or en masse, like some conservatives will say? Because even you admitted that in your high school it doesn't happen that often. So you know how the left sometimes is blind about trans sports? I feel like in that same same vein, on the right, you'll see people overblowing it. Like, you know Matt Walsh, have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
He said there were millions and millions of kids on puberty blockers, and when they
Yes.
fact-checked it, it was like 800, which you can disagree with that, but can you see that there's a problem on the right, too, with overblowing?
Yes, and I do. So I am Republican, but I also was a Democrat first, and then I went independent. The only reason I switched Republican is because I hate not voting, and I always wanted to vote primaries. This is honestly, when people ask me, military, we were a military family, but this is my issue. So my biggest thing is, you know what, you still have to remember that these kids are going to be adults. They might feel different. You know what, just give them the right key. So when I say that is, give them the key that's going to succeed. Give them the key to the right door. Because if you sit there and say, no, 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 they might be that kid who's going to grow up confused. Because you have to remember, they're getting pressure from everyone. My question is, which teacher do they have? Which principal do they have? What's their counselor like? My son's school, we had one counselor who had every flag up in the world, one counselor who didn't. My son had that counselor, and he said, I don't feel comfortable. I just feel like it's not coming to me. When he went to that other counselor, his grades went up because he had somebody who just saw him as a student, not as a white boy or a Republican boy or anything.
Do you think there's a use for a more inclusive counselor, though? Because like I know some people who grew up their whole lives being told, don't be gay, no matter what, please do not be gay. And then when they find out they're gay, they have no outlet. They have no ability to, like, because they feel trapped in their family. So maybe a counselor like that could help.
So I think what we have to think about is a counselor, to me, is like in the school, like a jury. So when you sit there and pick a jury, you want somebody who's not going to just choose them for, oh, they have brown hair. No, you want them to say, oh, I don't care if you have brown or blonde hair, I'm going to judge you if you're guilty or not. Should be a counselor too. I'm going to talk to you just as a normal person. And I think that's what we're missing, and I've noticed it in schools. There's no one really there who just has one agenda, and the ones who do are the ones who get prosecuted by the teachers, by the principal, and they're the ones who get fired first. I've seen it. So it's sad.
Do you argue with your family a lot?
I do argue with my family.
Are you guys cool after, though?
So it's funny. My grandparents actually live with me. One knows I'm here, one doesn't, because that one would not accept it. The other one actually said, well, I don't pay your bills. Do what you think is right. And I said, you know what? I love you. And that is what we should have.
Which one doesn't know you're here? What's their name?
My grandmother.
Sorry, Grandma, if you see this, You mentioned a jury. I think that's a good point to transition over. I want to ask you, do you think Donald Trump's convictions were justified?
So I will be honest, I was not able to watch a lot of it. In spring, I coach a lot, so it's mine. So I'm thinking, I do research it, but I don't give an opinion if I don't know the answer. So my thing is, you know what, if they found him guilty, they found him guilty. But here's my question. How many others are guilty that aren't being persecuted? Why are we going after him now, but we didn't go after him 30 years ago when people wanted him to go? Joy Bayer, they all liked him. You see clips of them going, you should run for president one day. Why now? Why are we doing this now?
This, because first of all, the obvious is like this crime was only committed a few years back, but to the point that nobody else is really charged with this. Michael Cohen, the person that was like his co-conspirator, his fixer, also got prison time for this. So they do charge for this. And when people say that there was a Democrat DA who ran on prosecuting Donald Trump, I understand what they're getting at, but I feel like when you're convicted by a jury of your peers who went through the process of voir dire, they were vetted by Trump's own lawyers, I feel like it's a fair verdict, you know?
And that's the thing. That's why I'm not saying much about it, because I didn't look into it.
And I respect that. I like.
And that's the whole thing. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, he was innocent. Now when people ask me, I'm going to vote, I'm saying yes, because I don't really know. But I do know what he has done, and I do know what he's going to do. And honestly, I'm just, how do I explain this? I'm going to say a word. I'm never going to vote for somebody that I haven't looked up things about.
That's fair.
Even though I'm Republican, I still vote person. I did vote Madeline Dean. I don't like Madeline Dean now, what she did to Abington. We all hate her in Abington, but I still voted for her. You know, I met Biden years ago when he was vice president. He saw our shirts that we were military wives. He gave us a hug in the middle of the parades, thanked us. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. But I don't like his politics. So I can like the person all I want, but if you're not going to do anything for myself, or especially my kids, I can't vote for you.
Do you think Biden's a decent human being? Because
when I met him, yes. I mean, to stop and sit there, and because we had Marine Wives shirts on, and to stop and just give us a hug, Secret Service, like, you got to go. And he's like, no, I'm going to hug. Great person. Is he now? I don't know. But he scares me when you see him on TV. I don't know if that's just news media.
Are you going to watch the debates this Thursday?
I am. So that I'm going to watch. We actually will be at the shore, and I said, no, this is where I am. I think it'll be really, I like debates. Debates to me actually show a person. Do I think questions are always fair? I can't judge that. I wish they would ask the same question to both right away instead of going, we're going to ask you this one and this one. Because it's kind of like, okay, well, they can answer that also.
Do you think there's a chance that people are setting this bar so low for Biden that all he has to do is just kind of walk over the bar and clear it? Because I was talking to someone earlier and they think Biden's going to like shit his pants on stage. And it's like, if you're setting the bar that low, you're bound to be disappointed.
So the funny thing is, I went to school here in Philadelphia. So a lot of my friends are mixed, Democrat and Republican. It's funny to see how many It's funny to see how many of my friends right now who are Democrat are undecided. And I think that's hilarious because I'm like, why? And they were like, honestly, we're just not doing well. I just had to spend $6 on eggs. And now, again, I'm also Ukrainian on my family.
Really?
So that's the other thing. We're big with the war. But my own family in Ukraine even wonders, why is the U.S. sending so much money? So when my aunt in Ukraine is asking that question, makes me wonder, why is a Ukrainian asking that?
Well, there's a slight correction. We're not just sending money. A lot of the aid we send is in the form of like old stockpiled military equipment.
A lot of the Ukrainians don't even know exactly what we're given. They watch the news also, and it's money. We're signing a bill for this much. So they don't understand that. But my aunt literally is questioning it, that the aid is more coming from the U.S. Why? And it's funny because we heard before this all happened a lot of connections. So my question is, why are we doing that when right now my ex-husband has to fight for veterans, for military benefits? My uncle had Agent Orange, just died 3 weeks ago. Had 10% military disability. It's not okay from what we're seeing.
So I think the argument you're making is totally valid. I think military veterans should absolutely be taken care of in our country. But I think that is, exactly. I think that is very separate from the Ukraine problem because we're sending, like I said, we're sending a lot of military equipment,
well, I have a
old
question.
tanks. Yeah.
Do you know how old some of the equipment is that they're using?
A lot of it's from the 90s.
No.
Nearing its expiration
My
date.
husband was in Afghanistan. They were using weapons from World War II. My ex-husband also had to switch to a whole different unit. He wasn't allowed to do things because he was about to end a service. There's a lot of things that people don't see on that end. So when I sit here saying we shouldn't send money over there, well, there's a lot of countries that need aid. So if we're just going to sit there and give it to one country, there's other countries who are going through.
Ukraine is in a very unique situation. So do you support Ukraine's right to push back against Russia?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm very big with that, and I do think we should help out. However, when our own country is diminishing, there's going to be a point, if we keep going down this route, there's not going to be any money to send to anyone. If we can't even take care of
it's not just money. Sorry to correct you again, but it's not just money.
But anything. But even that, you have to have money to have that. You have to have money to keep that up to date. You have to have the money to support.
The argument that I always give is, like you said, we're giving old military equipment, and after we give that, we can actually boost the American economy by rebuilding it, creating new manufacturing jobs, and then in the process of doing that, we get to protect Ukraine, our ally, from Russia, who's going on this World War II style invasion of annexing territory. It reminds me of 1939. So I just don't like that not your mindset. I don't like the mindset of some people where it's like, we shouldn't do anything. It kind of reminds me of Hitler invading Poland in 1939.
I mean, we have a cousin who was fighting. We haven't heard from him in 2 years.
Really?
So I'm for it. Trust me, I have a bumper sticker that says I support Ukraine. But my question is, do we have the money to keep giving them? We can send military money, military equipment. When we're sitting here, and when my ex-husband didn't even have equipment that was off of World War II, what are we really having that's not being broadcast? And it's funny because you sit there firsthand living on a base seeing it, but then when you hear the news, you're like, that is not at all what's happening. I don't understand. And then when you start to talk to people, they don't believe you. And you're like, but I lived it. I saw it. I don't think my ex would lie to me. I've seen the equipment. Like, we did a thing called Jane Wayne Day, where we actually had to spend a whole day doing theirs. I saw things that I'm like, do you still use this? How? Oh, okay, this is awesome. It's just, we have to worry about ourselves in the fact of, yes, help Ukraine, but when I see one veteran sitting on the ground because he can't afford it, or you see a 92-year-old working at Pizza Hut because she can't retire, that's not okay.
Yeah, of course,
So that's the question where I go, if you're giving all of that to Ukraine, what are you giving to the U.S.? Because we still have people here living on streets. 92-year-old working, that's not okay.
Yeah, the argument I'd make is that I personally believe Democrats are the ones that fight for more social safety nets at the bottom, and they almost want to recreate this Nordic model where it's a strong capitalist system, with a heavy social safety net. And it feels like sometimes Republicans are the ones that campaign on cutting Social Security and stuff like that. And I want to make this point one more time, sorry, but like the money that we give to people in the form of Social Security is very separate from our military budget. Our military budget, it's almost $1 trillion every single year. Think about how much we spent in Afghanistan. For a fraction of that, we're getting such a good return on investment. We're crippling Russia. We're telling Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, hey, you can't just invade countries, all for a fraction of that endless Afghanistan war.
No, and that's great. I completely understand. My big thing is everyone needs to start talking. But here's my other thing. We're so worried on that. I haven't seen anything being looked at. I think that's my point. All I hear is Ukraine, 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 which again, I love, but I haven't heard anything about vets.
Yeah.
Where is that coming into it? They'll say a little portion of it, but when I have an uncle who had Agent Orange who had 10% disability, and I fought for it for 2 years and still never got it because they changed the law last year or 2 years ago that Agent Orange doesn't get a lot. How is that okay? He didn't have kids on purpose. So my thing is, if I hear a lot about this issue, which is great, but we have vets who fought for our.
I understand that. Yeah.
Why aren't they getting anything? That's the question. Like it's to me, it's just sad nobody's talking.
Yeah.
And you can have, like you said, some that are doing it and some Republicans. Well, there's also some Republicans that are doing well and some Democrats who are doing. They all just have to talk. And unless we talk, nothing's going to get solved.
What we're doing right now is step one. Thank you for chatting with us.
No, of course. Sorry, I get off topic a lot.
No. That was honestly one of the best chats we've had. Like, I think it's really important in America for people that disagree slightly.
Yep.
We don't agree on anything, but we're able to stand here and come to a middle ground without fighting. Like, you know, on Twitter, everyone's at each other's necks.
And that's the thing. Like, I will always sit here and tell you my truth, but I'll always listen to you because honestly, while I'm going to walk, I'm going to sit and think like, oh, he did make a good point.
I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was brought to you by Ground News. While I was editing, I was reading this article from Ground News about a federal judge overturning a Florida law that blocked treatment for transgender children. And the unique part about this article is the distribution bias of the stories. Out of nearly 100 total news sources covering this story, less than 10% of them are right-leaning. Stories like this aren't being covered by right-wing news sources, so these stories don't pierce into the MAGA bubble. And that's the beauty of today's sponsor, Ground News. Their platform is incredibly helpful when you're trying to sort through all of your different sources, find out which ones are credible, and if you ever want to see what the other side is saying about a particular story. They even have a blind spot page where you can find news stories that have little or no coverage from one side of the political spectrum. And if I'm about to go out and debate MAGA or talk to Charlie Kirk, I want to know what conservatives are thinking on any given day, which is what makes this blind spot feed such a great tool for me. You can check all of this out at ground.news/Adam Mockler. A great example is Hunter Biden's recent conviction being disproportionately covered by right-wing outlets. They've written 57% of the articles, more than left-leaning and centrist outlets combined, which tells us that right-wing news sources are overemphasizing the trial. Ground News is a great tool to have heading into the 2024 election, especially since we live in an era where all of these news outlets are competing for the most explosive headlines. So it's really nice to have all of your sources laid out cleanly in one spot so you can tell, are they left-leaning, are they right-leaning, or are they center? And all you have to do is click on a given story, then scroll through all of the sources. So right here you can see that PBS covered this, CTV News covered this, and on the right side of the screen you can see if they lean left, lean right, if they have mixed factuality or high factuality. So with all of these tools that Ground News provides you can have a more thorough understanding of our current political landscape and what's going on any given day. All you have to do is go to ground.news/Adam Mockler. This month I was able to get my viewers, you guys, 40% off unlimited access to the Vantage subscription, which is the one that I use on a day-to-day basis. The link is in the description. Thank you to Ground News. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave a like and have a great day.